what I want to talk about today, which is very, very friggin' important as a comic book creator of, an owner of IPs and, creator and a writer of comic books. And whereas, of course, Hawk himself has, has worked on several comic books over the years and helped people create. We're going to be talking about Fables, right? You can see this. This is all my first issues, first releases, from number 1 all the way to number 7, right? And I think I've got the last couple. Yeah, there's number 7 here. This is Ferris, sorry, by the way, which is part of that universe. This is a 3-story series there, I think. But let's see, number 33. But and I'm going to tell you why this. So there's 1 to 6, right? 1 to 6, and at the time I put the and number 1 for me is a variant, by the way. This is a variant, right? So at the
Okay.
time, which is 2015, this was worth $600 New Zealand, right? So that was 600 New Zealand at that time. Number 2, right? $200 New Zealand. Number 3 was 140, and number 4 was 140. Number 5 was about $100, and then of course number 6 and 7 drops to about 50, right? And so on. Now, the thing about Fables is the background to Fables is they're based on fables, like characters like Cinderella, Jack the Giant Slayer, stuff like that. Wolf. What's that wolf one? Like
Big Bad Wolf.
Red Riding Hood, all that amazing, beautiful history. Snow White, right? The best of the best, and written in an amazing way, in the most greatest of all imprints, right? That I can think of for myself, apart from what happened with Image, but like the greatest of imprints, Vertigo, killed off a couple 6 months under. Only 6 months under a new leadership editor, it was killed off. That's how terrible 30 years of amazing books was destroyed by a woke idiot who didn't know what he was doing. Destroyed 30 years of amazing, high quality comic book storytelling, right? And from that, you had Preacher, you had Constantine, like one of my greatest characters of all time, in my top 3. Books like that, just the greatest of the greatest things that you can actually read. Long form stories are, Sandman, all that stuff, right? Was out of Vertigo, like really mature content, not in like sex or anything like, but actual themes and stuff. And that's why like Fables means a lot to me, because I love the whole, if you're a kid growing up on fairy tales, right? And then you get older, you're like, oh, not gonna be reading the same books, but then you get to read Fables, and you're like, wow, I get to see them in a new light. So now this was offered to a TV studio, right? Studio, production company, whatever you want to call them. And let me just find you which one. They installed the idea, right? And made their own. They said, "Oh, we don't want your story. It's not going to work for us," So lo and behold, Adam Horowitz and Edward Kitsis, right, were brought on to
Right.
create a whole new thing, right? And this is what I'm talking about. And I actually challenged one of the actors on this who appeared in New Zealand of the show. I said, "Did you know?" Because I was pissed off as a comic book person and a comic owner. I said, "Did you know that it's stolen from this? That you guys took what this was and made Once Upon a Time? Your studio took it." And he was like, "Oh, that's that." Like, I was like, "Yeah, not fair, is it?" So I was like, "Yeah, like now you guys are complaining about AI taking your jobs. you took some, these guys basically took this and turned it into Once Upon a Time with nothing back to Bill Willingham for doing this, and I was so upset at that as a creator. And what I'm upset about now is creators who have been whining and screaming and moaning about creator rights, as independent creator rights for decades, are turning on Bill Willingham because he's put this out into public domain, because he's had enough of DC Comics, go, like for 2 years, he said, I've got a story sitting there for 2 years. They've done nothing with it, right?
Right.
And they're reprinting that old stuff, right? But they're not even. I've got all these new stories to finish off. They're not doing it, and so he said, I own this. So everybody who is part of this, right, Vertigo, that way, right, own their products, like Preacher, right? What was the other one? Not gosh, Sandman, right? Owned by Neil Gaiman. Preacher's owned by, I should know the name. Why do I not know the name of The Boys creator? Dang it. I should know that. It's like, hold on, let me find it. The Boys. Boys are created by
Eric?
No, not Eric Kripke. No, he's just a TV producer dude. Garth Ennis. Dang it. I should know Garth Ennis. Right? He's one of my favorite writers of all time when it comes to things. There you go. Mr. Irish. He's Irish. I better not get that wrong.
Yeah.
He's not English. He's not Scottish. He's Irish. Right? So I haven't even seen The Boys, and I'll never will. Right? Everybody's saying it's the most brilliant, but I will not. But not because it's not brilliant, and not because I'm actually excited that I've got Carl Urban in there. But enough talking from me. But that's just a kind of feedback about how passionate I am about this, and I'm how passionate about what these guys who somehow were all about creator rights are now turning on the one creator who's going, enough, right? My rights, right? I can do with my own comic books or my creation what I can do. You can't say nothing. And so
Right.
DC saying, no, you can't say it. It's ours. It's like, you print all your comics, but it's mine. So he puts it on public domain because, of course, Cinderella and all those characters are public domain. But he said, now, if you guys want, you can write stories about, about the characters in there. Like from, the wolf guy. I can't remember. I've problem with memories there on that. But we'll look it up soon. So I want Hawk to jump in there about this. And, have you been following Hawk? You're muted, bud.
Yeah, I've been following very lightly about it.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple different interviews and stuff talking about this, and this is such an odd conversation. I wish this were more black and white than what it is. And I'll explain that in just a second because you got to explain.
Sure.
I have to explain intellectual property rights real fast in order to understand them. So Fables being based, the book Fables being based on fables, which are 700, 800,000 years old, is really hard to license. Now, once you create something new off of it, technically that new rendition can be yours, but it would be really hard to defend something like this in a fight legally. And this is where I wish that it were more black and white, because if it were more black and white, then the motives would be more clear as to what's going on.
Sure.
And so I kind of wonder at a point in time, is this because the studio says it belongs to them? He's fed up with the studio, and he says, "I'm not going to deal with you guys anymore. I'll show I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
I'll turn them over to public domain, and therefore relinquish my rights into the public's hands, of it." And that's why I wish it were more black and white to know exactly where he's coming at it from. is his
Well,
IP? Is it because he's
yep.
in an argument with the studio, or is it because the studio
Okay,
doesn't know
so
what to do with the IP because it's not 100% defendable because of the fact that it's based on content from.
no. It's got nothing to do with what they want to do with it. What it's got to do with it's like he's got work there. He did work for them. He's written new work to be, to go release and print. And so they like, so he goes here as of now, right? This is what he wrote on the 15th of last week, right? 15th of September. So as of now, 15th September, the comic book property called Fables, including all related Fables spin-offs and characters, is now in the public domain. What once was wholly owned by Bill Willingham is now owned by everyone for all time. It's done, right? And as most experts would tell you, once done, it cannot be undone. Take backs are neither contemplated nor possible. Then he goes, why did you do this, right? So, a number of reasons. I've thought of this over for some time. In no particular order, they are practicality. When I first signed my creator-owned publishing contract with DC Comics, the company was run by honest men and women of integrity who, for the most part, interpreted the details of that agreement fairly and above board. When problems individually came up, we worked it out like reasonable man and woman. Since then, over the span of 20 years or so, right? So this is 20 years of this work, right? That he's been working with them on this. 20 years or so, these people have left or been fired, and some of them are like Shelley Bond, right? And gosh, who was the other one? I should remember the one before. She was an amazing person, right? So those people have left and been fired. Like I said, the guy that they put in place of Shelley Bond destroyed Vertigo, right? Destroyed Vertigo. So to be replaced by a revolving door of strangers of no measurable integrity who now choose to interpret every fashion of our contract in ways that only benefit DC Comics and its own companies. At one time, the Fables properties were in good hands, and now, by virtue of attrition and employee replacement, the Fables properties have fallen into bad hands. Since I can't afford to sue DC to force them to live up to the letter and the spirit of our long-term agreements, since even winning such a suit would take ridiculous amounts of money out of my pocket and years out of my life. I'm 67 years old and don't have the years to spare. I can understand where he's coming from about that. I've decided to take a different approach because I was in the same situation. I was like, you need $10,000 to fight to protect your logo. I said, I don't have that money. I'm poor as. I'm working hand to mouth. I'm just going to leave it, right? And I've decided to take a different approach and fight them in a different arena. Inspired the principle of asymmetric warfare, the one thing in our contract that DC lawyers can't contest or reinterpret to their own benefit is that I am the sole owner of the intellectual property. I can sell it or give it away to whomever I want. I chose to give it away to everyone. If I couldn't prevent Fables from falling into bad hands, at least this is a way I can arrange that it falls into many good hands, right? And I'm keen to have a look at Bill. So the thing about this, right? Bixby, right? Bixby, right? So he names the characters. He gives them new identity, right? So they're not like the same characters from there. You can recognize them there, but these are like the grown-up versions or the mature versions, our world versions of them, right? So, right, I can arrange that it also falls into many good hands, right? That's the important thing. Since I truly believe there are still more good people in the world than bad ones, I've counted as a form of victory. And here's the thing: there'll be a lot of bad stories, but there's a lot of good independent creators who, what is it called, like biting at the, what's that, bits? Yeah, horses' bits, biting at the bits to jump on and do something with it. I hope whoever comes to do it, if you are just trying it, do a little 3-page story, right? If you're really good at it, go for the whole shebang. Write friggin' novels, whatever. I'm talking to you, John Delaros. right? Right. So philosophy, right? So I count that as a form of victory. Philosophy. In the past decade or so, my thoughts on how to reform the trademark and copyright laws in this country and others, I suppose, have undergone something of a radical transformation. The current laws are a mishmash of unethical backroom deals to keep trademarks and copyrights in the hands of large corporations who can largely afford to buy the outcomes they want. It's happened many times, as you know, with Jerry Siegel and the Schuster family. They were keeping them out. Those guys died. One of them died homeless, or something like poor. And yet you've got, you know, you got Superman up there. Everything they can think of, they made Superman into, merchandise wise. So in my template for radical reform of those laws, I would like it if any IP is owned by its original creator for up to 20 years from the point of first publication, and then that goes into the public domain for any and all to use. However, at any time before that 20 years span bleeds out, you, the IP owner, can sell it to another person or corporate entity who can have exclusive use of it for up to maximum of 10 years, right? Then that's it. Then it cannot be resold. It goes into public domain or so. So then at the most, any intellectual property can be kept. I want to ask you the question about this soon, Hawk. I'm going to finish off with this one before we go into DC, and we'll come back to the DC part later on. So then at the most, any intellectual property can be kept for exclusive use for up to about 30 years and no longer without exception. So for me, I'll rather it just goes back to the family, right? Not into public domain. Of course, because that's how I feel with my properties. It's like, right, the company uses for 10 years, and if I decide again 10 more years, yeah, I'm allowed to do that. And if I'm about to pass on, if I die, it goes to the family. That's the way I deal with it, because legacy is important to me in that way. So here we go. Of course, if I'm going to believe such radical ideas, what kind of hypocrite would I be if I didn't practice them? Right. So he's putting his mouth, his money, where his mouth is, basically putting his money where his mouth is, or acting on what he believes. And this should be honored, right? Every creator out there should be going, yeah, right. This is someone who's stepping out and going, yes, I'm saying this, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to say what, I'm going to walk the talk, like we say in New Zealand, right? And I'm sure everybody elsewhere does the same thing, but like, walk the talk, dude. Put your money where your mouth is. So he's doing that. Of course, I'm going to believe such, right? So Fables has been my baby for about 20 years. I know what that's like, right? I've had Incredi-Girl in my head since 2007. So we're up to about 16 years now. And we've finally got an issue out that I'm happy about. It's time, proud of, I should say, not happy about, proud of. It's time to let it go. This is my first test of this process. If it works, and I see no legal reason why it won't, look for other properties to follow in the future. Since DC or any other corporate entity doesn't actually own the property, they don't get to say in this decision. All right, let's go. We'll leave it there, and we'll go back to as a publisher. Let's talk to Hawk about this, and then we'll hit back at DC's end. So take it away, Hawk.
Well, they are very messy. The intellectual property rights laws and the way that things are set up right now is Sonny Bono was actually the person to push for longer legal rights of IP. A lot of people don't know that, but he reformed the whole system, because before it was set up here in the U.S. that you could only hold a property for it was a limited amount of years, and then it would fall into public domain. And Sonny Bono was able to extend that to like 100 years from what it was. I think it was 60 or 80 before, something like that. And then so many years after death, then it would fall into a public domain set.
Yeah,
Sonny Bono changed that entire thing, and now Disney's actually trying to change it again.
yeah.
So they're trying to
I, I,
change
I
it because Mickey Mouse is coming
yeah,
up for grabs, and so Superman's coming up for grabs, and there's a lot of stuff that's coming up for grabs that's going to fall into the
yeah,
public domain and change the way that we look at things. Um, I I I I kind of see where he's coming from. It is a
yeah,
mess, but
yeah,
but there's also the mess of the way people think about it too. And And that's not just from the lawyer's standpoint.
Mm.
I agree that there's definitely a turn or a difference in in how this generation or the newest generation that's coming to power is dealing with things.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. I mean, and I think that has to do everything with that film we watched, and we talked about those things there about keeping your word and everything else. That
Yeah.
has to do with that. Where is honor and integrity and all of those other things taught, and how does it
Mm.
get taught? And I think that has a lot to play with it. And it doesn't mean that all lawyers have to be dishonest.
Mm.
You know, that's not the case. It's I know that there's that stereotype going around, and I don't want to get too deep into that. But from this intellectual property set, he's right. He basically ripped it out of their hands. You don't want to
Mm.
play nice. Okay, I'll take your ball away.
Yeah.
Here you go. Go stand in the
Yeah.
corner for a little while. I don't really think, and from a business sense, DC really doesn't have. I mean, they're a big company, yes,
Yeah.
but they're on the decline. Like, I don't really think that they're really in a position to piss a bunch of people off.
No.
I
But
wouldn't.
but here's the thing: they have people in the what they call the whisper networks, in the backroom, people, creators, who are vying for his job. Right? They want to destroy him so they could look good to their bosses. Right? This is the world we live in now, where that creators are like are willing to destroy good people just so they get a hand up, right? To look good to the bosses, and this has happened. So they've got all these hit pieces on Bill Willingham now, right? The guy who's trying to protect their friggin' rights by acting on his own to do this. They've got their own network of people coming out, hitting out at him, which is what really pissed me off. But carry on.
Well, you see him saying this was going to paint a target on him. There's no doubt. This was going
Yeah,
to paint a target on him. And it won't just be from DC. It'll be from other people as well,
yeah,
because you don't want the dominoes to fall, right? I mean, they're not
yeah.
going to
But
want
I
the
mean,
dominoes to fall.
but these are the guys that were like, like there's no punk rockers out there anymore, right? You know what I mean? There's no punk
No,
rock creators
I,
anymore.
I don't
And
understand
so,
that.
right, so punk rock creators are like, hey, we're here to do good things. It's our thing, and we're going to do good things with it. It's ours. Whereas these guys like, yo, we're for the corporates, right? We're for the corporates, right? And this is what I see with this thing. It's like, okay, you build, it's you're a creator owned thing. You've done great things with it. You know what? Screw you, mate. I'm for the corporates now, right? I'm for the billion dollar company now. That's what I mean. So you've got all these people who pretend to be creators, right? Individuals, and who are like want creator rights, who want to do unions, right, to protect their work. Have someone like him coming up and putting his head out. They put, and you're saying target on the back. I don't mind DC putting the target on his back, but creators putting their target on another creator's back like this, it's like, what is that? Like, it's like suddenly if I go, okay, here's what I'm going to do, and so I join some company, and that company screws me, so I go, I'm going to take my stuff somewhere else, and then that company goes, okay, I'm going to go at you, but no, people in that company goes, oh, you know what? Even though he's doing good, I'm going to go for him. I'm going to put a target on his back as well. And this is what I see with Bill. And I find that very sad. The guy is 67 years old, and he's going, on my way out, I'm going to protect my property, but I'm also going to give it to everybody else. But I'm also going to help you guys in the long run, show you the way to protect your own property. And this is, that's why I can't find this whole thing. I don't mind if DC comes after him. I think that's fine. Corporates will always come after you. But to see creators come after someone who's actually working for the creators, I think it's like, it just feels weird to have
Well,
that, because,
well,
carry on.
first off, I don't agree with that though, Aru. I don't
Mm.
know anyone that's really for the corporation.
Oh, no.
So let me explain,
Yeah.
right?
Carry on.
And I've worked in the corporate field. These guys are in it for the money. Like
Oh yeah,
that's what they're in it for. It's
yeah,
not
yeah,
about the
yeah,
corporation.
yeah.
And what this has to do, again, it has to do with integrity. What are you willing to give up so that the world's a better place? What are
Right.
you willing to do so that the world is a better place? You have a choice now, a choice that's
Yeah.
on your in your feet. You know, one of our writers told me this. There's the wrong decision, there's the bad decision, the wrong decision,
Yeah.
the right decision, and the good decision is how he put it. Right?
Mm, mm,
You've got all of these choices in front of you. Which one
mm.
are you going to choose? And the point is you can, you know, are you willing to do what corporate tells you to do? This is
Yeah.
much like the same as a soldier in a war. We want you to kill all these children. Oh well, you know, does the soldier go through with it, or is,
Right.
you know, and carry that moral thing? I know that's a very extreme circumstance, but it's
Right.
the same principle at its core. The core is you're
Exactly.
given a decision, and you can make a good one, or you
Mm.
can make a bad one. You know, and you know, you think, well, okay, this is gonna these people are, I don't think they're corporate. I think that they're just not thinking about what their actions, that their actions are going to have consequences, and those consequences are going to be devastating
Yeah.
toward the people they're working with. They're not
Yeah.
thinking at all, and for whatever reason, and here's the worst part. The worst part is that these are the people that HR is hiring. You know, human resources in a lot of
Yeah.
companies are meant to filter out people
Yeah.
that they, you know, and find the people that they think is best for them.
Mm.
And this is kind of I really have a problem with human resources in a lot of companies because they really don't know what they're doing, and they're really
Yeah.
clueless, and they're nothing but kind of lap dogs for the company, and they automatically bow down
Right.
to some of this stuff. So you know, and they never really put into thought that, you know, they're next on the chopping block, you know, that is,
Yeah.
so this is why I don't believe that these people are really corporate, because how can you be really corporate unless you own the company? You can't really be corporate, you know,
Right.
unless you have some kind of stock or ownership in it. I don't see how it's ever going to benefit you, because you're nothing more than a number that you're going to
Mm.
end up on the street at some point.
Right.
And that is just the way the world is, and I talked about that in our last thing too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Before, those people used to keep jobs for 50, 60 years, and you would retire
Mm.
from that job, and then as the new generation come in, they were trying to keep up with the older generation, so they had to find a way to cut their losses. Well, we can just cut
Yeah.
people, and that
Yeah.
destroyed lives. And they never thought about how it affected the world greater, and it did affect the world greater.
Mm.
So it sounds like to me, you know, that he's looking to do some, he may be looking to do some good. This may
Yeah.
be this may be him getting back at them for an argument in which we don't know. That could be another
Mm.
possibility for his choice.
Well, I think like you know, like I was mentioning, Karen Berger was a person, right? So she was a founder of the DC imprint. So what she did was to go out and find really, really good writers from all over the world, right? Like she went out, found people in 2000 AD, right? You know, in this great book, right? And she brought over Garth Ennis, she brought over Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, right? And they had their own imprint. You had, you know, I mean, not imprint, they had their own titles on DC Vertigo. And as I mentioned, this thing went for 30 odd years. And I actually have one of my letters is printed in Constantine number 275 or something like that, where I wrote it and I said, hey, I don't want Constantine to go into DC, right? Comics, which it eventually did, because I don't want him to go into mainstream, because I wanted to stay there, because I love the fact that this guy was, you know, the stories were being told in a mature way. And now he just another tack on, you know, character. And so, but let's go. So I just want to talk about the Karen there, but let's go back to his letter, right? And he talks about
Can I can I
Karen.
interject something real quick? You know, I mean, we're talking
Please do.
about, you know, some of these writers that you feel that are stabbing him in the back for putting his property on public domain.
Mm,
Um, if I'm following this correctly, because I may not be 100% correct on this.
yeah.
What I see is that DC is still able to write stories based under fables.
Mm,
Oh, correct?
Yeah.
And he's not getting any real cut of that anymore. So to kind of hurt DC, he throws it in the public domain.
Yeah.
The way I see it is, I mean, and I fully agree that he should be able to do that. I have fully support that.
Yeah.
But I'm not an up and coming writer either.
Right.
If I was an up and coming writer and I was at DC and I was put on a title that all of a sudden just got thrown into public domain, and DC's like, "Oh, we're not going to do that anymore. We don't need your services any longer." I'd probably have I'd probably be a little pissed off at him doing what he did. Right or wrong, he's affected my pocket, my ability to become a better writer. And, you know, he's kicked me down the rungs of the ladder. Regardless of what's going on, he's at the top of the ladder. He is a prolific writer. He is not going to have a problem getting a job. Me, I'm at the bottom of the ladder. I may have a problem getting a job. It'd be kind of like if they did with Larry Hama, they gave him G.I. Joe, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, we're just going to kill it after 5 issues, and we don't need your services any longer." You know, he hasn't had time to develop how good of a writer he is. You know? And I can see where other writers would be painting a target on his back because of that action. You know, not knowing the whole story or whatever, just as a knee-jerk reaction. Sure. Am I saying anything off? Am I off on my analysis of that?
No, I mean that could be it.
But I don't think that stops DC though. Now it's in public domain. DC can continue on. They just don't have to pay him royalties anymore. It's public. It belongs to the public. Everybody.
Yeah.
They just can't stop someone else from doing it. Yeah.
So let's have a look at this. So what exactly has DC done? DC Comics done to provoke this? So too many things to list exhaustively here, but here are some highlights. Throughout the years of my business relationship with DC, with Fables and other intellectual properties, DC has always been in violation of their agreements with me, right? So that's always has been in violation of their agreements with me. Usually it's in smaller matters like forgetting to seek my opinion on artists for new stories, right? So talking about that, right? So as a publisher, Rising Sun sends me artists. I get to pick and choose which artists I want to work on the books, right? Out of like about 2 or 3, because of styles, because, Rising Sun knows what sort of style I'm after. I let them know, this is what I want for this story, and this for this story, and this for this story. I want someone with a manga one who work on this manga book that I'm doing. Or I want something with a more sci-fi one. I'm looking for this. Or I want a superhero style. I want to do this, and so on. Right. So that's what he's saying here. Like, they don't even ask me for my opinion about the look of the book, and the look of the book is very important. Like, I canceled a book because I held it, because I didn't like what my artwork was looking like on it, because I'm not that up to spec, right? It's great for webcomics, but not for, especially when you're giving it away for free, but it's not to the quality that I want to someone go on the shelf, right? And as a comic books seller, right? Stu, right? Big Stu, you'd want something good on your shelf that like people come and go, oh yeah, buy it, look at it and go, yeah, this is something I want to buy. And that's the feel I want to do when I'm doing something like comics. Right. So he's right in here saying, hey, look, they don't even ask me about who's going to work on my freaking stories. I'm writing a story and I've got all this experience with this, and people know me, and if they pick up a book and it's not up to par, people won't read my books anymore. They won't buy any more books. So he's, that's what he's saying here, for my understanding, right? So, so artists for new stories, forgetting to seek my opinion on artists for new stories, or for covers. Covers are very, very freaking important, or formats of new collections and stuff. So they just basically do whatever they want, right? Is what he's saying, without without the creator being involved. In those times when called on it, they automatically said, "Sorry, we overlooked you again. It just fell through the cracks." Dude, he's been working with you for 20 years. How do you forget him? He's a guy who's made you millions, right? And we're not talking about little million. I'm talking about millions, right? This book has sold millions of copies, right? Trades and stuff, and I'm talking about everything: hardcovers, omnibuses, the works, because it's such a beloved book, right? Okay, so they use the "fell through the cracks" line so often and so reflexively that I eventually had to bar them from using it ever again. This is pretty full on, right? This is not just silly buggers, as we call it, which is just mucking around. This is actually the real deal. So they are often late reporting royalties. We were talking about royalties there. Hawk, and often underreport said royalties, forcing me to go after them to pay the rest of what's owed. Lately, though their practice have grown beyond these mere annoyances, prompting some sort of showdown. First, they tried to strong arm the ownership of Fables from me. Right, so here we go. Firstly, they tried to strong arm the ownership of Fables from me. When Mark Doyle and Dan Didio first approached me with the idea of bringing Fables back for its 20th anniversary, both gentlemen since fired, right? This is what he was talking about earlier. These guys who were being there for ages, now fired, right? And this is a problem I have with comics in general, that you've got all these amazing, legendary editors, writers, artists who are like the figureheads in these companies, who have all this knowledge. They've gotten rid of them to replace them with people just out of high school. I mean, like just out of college, and we know that because they're writing shit, right? And the other day, somebody, who was it? Mark Miller was saying that. Oh no, I won't say it was Mark Miller. It was somebody else, big name, who said that people, why they put out so many variant covers? Because nobody bothers to read the inside, so they just buy for the art on the cover. I'm one of those people, right? So because what's inside is crap, and so they have to put out so many variant covers so people will actually buy the comics. This is what he's saying is a professional in the mainstream, right? So here we go. Since fired, right? Dan Didio, both gentlemen since fired from DC. During the contract negotiations for the new issues, the legal negotiations try to make it a condition of the deal that the work be done as work for hire, right? So now the creator who created this wants him to be working for them on work for hire after 20 years of being, basically there, like almost like an employee. Now you want to be like a part-timer, not even that, a casual worker. This is what work for hire is like. Kind of feels like. So work for hire is like a casual worker. You can just do your work and move on, right? Or you're called on whenever you want. Effectively throwing the property irrevocably into the hands of DC, right? When that didn't work, their excuse was, "Sorry, we didn't read your contract going into these negotiations. We thought we owned it." Right? So I'm going to leave it there on that, because you guys can check it out. I'll put the link up, because that, just then of course DC comes there, goes, "Oh no, we own it. He can't do this," and then all that text happen against him, and which is really what, like I said, pissed me off. Creators who for years go on about, "Oh, creator rights, turn on the guy who's actually trying to get the creator rights, fighting over creator rights. And I think it anyway. Did you want to give us some feedback on that? Actually, I would like your feedback on that. Hawk, please.
I think the bigger problem, and this is something that we're just seeing overall, and being an indie publisher and producing, and I think this is definitely a much bigger topic, but I think this is the overarching step, is that there's a lot of guys on the lower scale that think that they are far more valuable than what they really are, right? and there's a lot of that. There's too much of that. There's so much of that. Someone
Yeah.
down the line is feeding them a line that just doesn't work. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you're worth every penny, blah blah blah. But the
Yeah.
truth is that you're probably not worth
Mm.
every penny. You know,
And I feel those are the ones that are doing the attacking. To be honest, I feel
yeah,
those are the ones who have been doing the attacking. Carry on.
well, I think that that's this scenario, right? So
Mm.
these guys that they've had there forever, they were having a very, you know, they were probably, you know, making a lot of money, and it comes back to this thing again. How do we save money at DC? Well, look, this person's making this amount, that person's making that amount. We could fire them and bring someone in for a fraction of that cost,
Right. Yeah.
and still fill the position. And
Yeah.
so those people come in, and now they've got this kind of big head that they're so valuable because first job coming out, and they think that, oh,
Mm.
I'm making big money now and I really know what
Mm.
I'm talking about, blah blah blah. When the truth is that they probably don't, and they're
Mm.
probably asking too much for the minimal services in which they do deliver.
Yeah.
And you know, and I think that this goes for everyone. I mean, it really goes for everyone. I don't mean
Mm.
take less money. I meant hold your tongue. You know, try and go through the process of learning before you start demanding. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what this feels like too, is that these people that took over the contract, they just assume, and then
Yeah.
they jump to it.
Yeah.
And rather than trying to make rather than try to build a relationship with the person they're working with, is what they should have done.
Mm.
And they just completely abandon that for for trying to please corporate, because
Yeah.
this is probably the most amount of money they've ever made. And
Yeah.
what does it make them look like? It makes them look like douchebags. That's what it makes them look like. It makes them look really
Yeah.
bad.